I took the job at Blackwood Ridge because I wanted silence. After the divorce, after the city noise, I just wanted to be alone. They told me it was the most isolated fire lookout in the state of Montana. No internet, no cell service, just a radio for emergencies and miles of endless green pine trees. Perfect. The drive up took 4 hours on a dirt road that was barely wide enough for my Jeep. When I finally saw the tower, standing like a skeleton against the gray sky, I felt a wave of relief. It was 70 feet tall, swaying slightly in the wind. I unpacked my gear. The cabin at the top was small, just a bed, a stove, a desk, and windows on all 4 sides. The 360-degree view was breathtaking, but as the sun began to set on that first night, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. I found the logbook from the previous ranger, a guy named Arthur. The first few entries were normal, weather reports, bird sightings. But the last entry, dated 2 months ago, was strange. It was written in shaky, jagged handwriting. It just said, "Don't whistle back. Whatever you do, don't whistle back." I laughed it off. Cabin fever, I thought. Isolation makes people weird. I spent the first 2 days just reading and watching the horizon. But on the 3rd evening, I was sitting on the catwalk, smoking a cigarette, when I heard it. From deep down in the valley, echoing through the trees, came a whistle. It wasn't a bird. It was a melody. A slow, human tune. Without thinking, I whistled back. Just a reflex. The forest went dead silent. The wind stopped. The birds stopped. And then, from much closer than before, the whistle answered me. Same tune, but louder. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I put out my cigarette and went inside, locking the flimsy door. That was the moment the isolation stopped feeling like a gift and started feeling like a cage. The next morning. I tried to rationalize it. A hiker, a hunter. But we were 40 miles from the nearest town. Nobody comes out here. I decided to do a perimeter check at the base of the tower. The ground was soft from the morning dew. That's when I saw them. Footprints, but they were wrong. They looked like human feet, bare feet, but they were too long. The toes were stretched out, and the heel dug too deep into the mud. And they were circling the tower, round and round and round. I gripped the handle of my hatchet tight. "Hello," I yelled out. "Private property," my voice echoed. "Private property, property, property." And then a voice came back from the tree line. "Hello, private property." It wasn't an echo. It was my voice, perfectly recorded and played back. But the intonation was flat, like a machine trying to sound human. I scrambled back up the tower ladder, my heart hammering against my ribs. I locked the trapdoor shut and piled my heavy supply crate on top of it. I grabbed the radio. "Base, this is Blackwood Tower. Come in. Over. Static. Base, I have an intruder. I need assistance. Over. Static." Then the static cleared, and a voice came through the radio speaker. "Base, I have an intruder. I need assistance." It was me again. It was mocking me. I turned the radio off. I sat in the corner of the cabin, clutching the hatchet. Night fell. It was pitch black outside. I couldn't see anything through the windows, just my own reflection. Around midnight, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. The sound of metal groaning. Someone was climbing the ladder, Clang, 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 slow, deliberate steps. I stopped breathing. I stared at the trap door on the floor. The heavy crate was on top of it, but would it be enough? The climbing stopped right under the floorboards. Then a gentle knock. Tap, 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 and a voice. Not my voice this time. It was a woman's voice, soft and sweet. Honey, open up. It's cold out here. I covered my mouth to stop a scream. That was my ex-wife's voice. But she was in Chicago. She couldn't be here. Elias, please. The voice changed mid-sentence. It dropped an octave, turning into a guttural growl. Open the door. Asterisk. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The thing beneath the floorboards let out a screech that sounded like a mix between a laughing hyena and a crying baby. Then it started slamming against the trapdoor. Thud, thud, thud. The crate jumped with every hit. Dust fell from the ceiling. Go away, I screamed. The slamming stopped instantly. Then I heard the sound of fingernails or claw scratching against the wood. It was testing the perimeter. It was looking for a way in. I looked at the windows. We were 70 feet up. Nothing could reach the windows. Then a hand slapped against the glass. A pale, elongated hand with too many joints. It slapped against the north window. Then another on the east window. It was climbing the outside of the tower. It was moving like a spider. I backed into the center of the room, spinning around. A face pressed against the glass. It looked human, but the skin was too loose, hanging off the skull like a mask that didn't fit. The eyes were wide, unblinking, and glowing with a faint luminescence. And it was smiling. A smile that stretched too wide, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. It tapped on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. It mouthed the words, "Let me in." I closed my eyes. It's not real. It's not real. Crash. The sound of shattering glass. It wasn't the main window. It was the small vent window near the stove. A long, pale arm snaked inside, groping blindly for the door latch. I didn't think. I swung the hatchet. I hit the arm. Black, viscous fluid sprayed onto the floor. The creature shrieked a sound so loud it shattered the radio bulb. The arm retracted instantly. I heard it slide down the metal legs of the tower, screeching all the way down. Then silence. I didn't sleep. I nailed a blanket over the broken vent. I sat there, hatchet in hand, waiting for the sun. Asterisk, the sun rose, but the fog was thick. I couldn't see the ground. I knew I couldn't stay another night. If it came back, it would get in. The windows wouldn't hold. I packed my keys, the hatchet, and a flare gun I found in the emergency kit. I had to climb down the ladder, 70 feet, exposed. I opened the trapdoor. The cold morning air rushed in. It smelled like rot and wet fur. I looked down. The ladder disappeared into the fog. I started to climb. My hands were shaking so hard I almost slipped. Every rung felt like a mile. 50 feet. I heard a twig snap below. 30 feet. I saw a shadow moving in the mist near the base of the tower. 10 feet. I jumped the last part, landing hard in the mud. I scrambled up and sprinted toward my Jeep. It was parked 50 yards away. I was halfway there when I heard the whistle. It was right behind me. I didn't look back. I fumbled for my keys. I could hear heavy, wet footsteps slapping against the mud, closing the distance. I reached the door, dropped the keys. No, no, no. I fell to my knees, grabbing them from the mud. I felt hot breath on my neck. I spun around and fired the flare gun blindly into the fog. A red streak of light illuminated a nightmare. It was standing just 5 feet away, 7 feet tall, pale, hairless, with limbs that bent backward. It recoiled from the light, hissing. I scrambled into the driver's seat and slammed the door. The creature lunged. It slammed into the side of the car, rocking the whole vehicle. I jammed the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered. "Come on." The face pressed against the driver's side window. It was wearing Arthur's uniform. Or rather, it was wearing Arthur's skin. The ranger patch was still on the shoulder. The engine roared to life. I floored the gas. The tires spun in the mud, then caught traction. I hit the creature with the side mirror. It snapped off with a sickening crunch, and I sped down the mountain road. I drove for 3 hours without blinking. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station in a town called Libby. I walked inside, shaking. The clerk, an old man, looked at me with concern. "You okay, son? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need to use the phone," I whispered. I called the ranger station headquarters. I told them everything, or at least a version of it. I told them there was a bear, a massive, aggressive bear. I told them I quit. They sent a team up there the next day to retrieve my gear. They called me a week later. "Elias," the sheriff said on the phone, "we found your Jeep tracks. We found the broken window, but we found something else." "What?" I asked. "We found a journal. It looks like it belongs to you, but the handwriting, it's strange." My blood went cold. I took my journal with me. "No," the sheriff said. "This one was found under the tower, buried in the dirt. The last entry is dated today." "That's impossible," I said. "What does it say?" There was a pause. "It says he thinks he got away, but I know where he lives now. I have his scent. I'm coming to Chicago." I hung up the phone. That was 3 days ago. I'm in my apartment in the city. The lights are on. The doors are locked. But 10 minutes ago, I heard it, faintly, coming from the ventilation shaft in my hallway. A whistle. A slow, human tune. And I think I just heard the lock on my front door click open.